Welcome back to another episode of the Field of 68's off-season grades. My name is Rob Dauster, and I'm joined today by Jeff Goodman, the noted nomad who is currently in his parents' house. It looks like his old bedroom that he grew up living in, with his Boston Red Sox hat, because he's not allowed to wear anything but a Boston Red Sox hat when he is in Cape Cod in Massachusetts. Jeff, we're going to be breaking down Arizona. We're going to be breaking down Tommy Lloyd's roster. We're going to be breaking down the Caleb Love show. Are we going to get the Caleb Love show again in Arizona? A quick update on what their roster looks like. They lost Umar Ballo, who transferred to Indiana. They lost Pella Larson, who was a second-round pick in the NBA draft. They lost Kashad Johnson, who went pro. And they lost Kylan Boswell, who was transferred to Illinois. They added Trey Townsend from Oakland, a really good fifth-year pickup. Toby Awaka from Tennessee. Carter Bryant is a really promising freshman. I think is going to have a bigger role than people realize. And Anthony Delorso from Campbell has transferred into the program, a shooter that averaged 20 points a game last season. The big news, bring back Jaden Bradley, bring back KJ Lewis, bring back Caleb Love. Before we get into all of the conversation about Caleb Love and all that, I just what are your thoughts overall on what Tommy has done to kind of rebuild this team given what they lost?
I mean, I think he's done just a really good job since he got the job, right? I think people forget kind of where it was at that point. Now, again, he inherited some really good players from Sean Miller that first year, which helped him kind of bridge the gap. And, some people were down on him going into last year because they hadn't done a whole lot in the NCAA tournament and had been so good in the regular season, so dominant that a lot of Arizona fans were expecting a Final Four run. But he's got two Sweet 16s to his credit. Probably should have beaten Clemson last year if they had played well, but a certain player went 0 for 9 from 3 in that game, and that hurt him. And ultimately, the bottom line is, he's got a chance again. He's got him in the equation in their first year in the Big 12 to compete for the top third in the league. Could they win the league? Maybe. I don't think they will, but they've got enough firepower. They've got enough guys coming back. That's the key, right? Like the ultimate, to me, the ultimate way of doing it is bring back like 4 of your top 8, right? And then go get a couple freshmen and go get 3 or 4 transfers. That's exactly what he's done. That's exactly what he's done. He's got a fifth-year Caleb Love who got better last year, made improvement on both ends of the court with his decision-making and his defense. And then you add in, obviously what you've got coming back, right? Jaden Bradley coming off that game against Clemson where he carried the team and they almost won that game. KJ Lewis, who had a really good freshman year, and Krivas. You didn't mention Krivas, but Krivas is going to be playing big, big minutes. And I think to be honest, I think he and Awaka can be a better 1-2 punch up front in terms of how they kind of play off one another than any front court duo they probably had there.
Yeah, I was gonna get to Krivas in a second because I do think that he is a guy where, I want to save that conversation. I'm gonna go to the guards, because I think that a lot is riding on the development of Jaden Bradley as a point guard, right? KJ Lewis, really good athletic wing. I think he's a guy that's going to be in line for a breakout. I think that there was some NBA interest in him. I think he made the right decision to come back. I think he's a potential pro down the road. Caleb Love is Caleb Love, right? You got to try to rein him in. You don't want to squash all of that aggressiveness, and you just got to hope that on the big nights you get good Caleb instead of bad Caleb. And sometimes you're going to get bad Caleb. That's the roller coaster that is Caleb Love. To me, I think Jaden Bradley is kind of a key to this team because, look, we talk about point guard play all the time on Field of 68, right? And he is a guy that has shown flashes of being really, really good and defensive minded, and has also never really shown the ability to be like a full-time lead guard that can run a team and run a program. So where do you stand on Jaden Bradley?
Yeah, I want to see it, right? I mean, that's the thing is you've got Caleb Love, who's a little bit of a roller coaster ride, not a little bit, but a lot. And you've got now Jaden Bradley, who's a little bit of a roller coaster ride as well. 2 semi-inconsistent guards. Again, I think they're going to be good in the regular season. And in the NCAA tournament, I just don't know if I buy them going deep. Like I think, listen, I'm pretty sure I called it to a T last year. What would happen? Did I not?
More or
Caleb,
less.
yeah, I don't know if I thought they'd have maybe quite as much success in the regular season than they did, but I said, like, they're going to be a really good team. And then they're going to go, Caleb Love's going to take him to the Sweet 16, and then he's going to have one of those games. Now, we thought Colin Boswell would be better last year, more consistent. So you had really three guards that Tommy Lloyd didn't really know what he was getting almost every night from those guys. Like Caleb Love, you knew for the most part after a while what you were getting. But going into the year, you had no idea with Caleb Love, Jaden Bradley. Really, Pelle Larson was the one guy you knew, right? He was the one guy you knew what you were going to get every single night. And I think they're going to miss that, Rob.
Yeah, I'd make the argument that that Jaden Bradley, it was fine not knowing what you were getting from him because he was kind of like the complementary piece, right? Like his role basically last year was play good defense, and when you get your opportunities, try to take advantage of them, right? Last year it was Kai Boswell going like this. Kai Boswell's a bigger roller coaster than Caleb Love. I'd make that argument
He
because
was last year. Yeah,
like on Caleb Love's bad nights, right? There was still something there. You still got some level of scoring. You still got some level of consistency. Like when Kai Boswell was off, you got nothing. Like zeros across the board. Like you're better off just not playing him because someone else is going to go out there and do something. So I think that you're 100% right. Finding a way to get Jaden Bradley to provide some level of a floor in that backcourt, I think, is really important.
Is he a
Combined,
guy who makes people better too, Rob? Like
yes.
that's somebody's got to make people better in that
Mhm.
backcourt because, frankly, that was part of their issue last year. And you had Pelle Larson doing it from a different spot a year ago. Now, I do think their bigs are going to be able to do that better. Like Umar Ballo never did that, right? And he couldn't stretch it at all. I know we'll get to Toby Awaka, but I think that's going to be a little bit of a different look for Arizona at that big spot with more skill than they had over the last couple of years.
Yeah, but well, I want to go to Trey Townsend first because I think that Trey Townsend at the 4 was the big transfer addition that they went out and got, right? Like he is a guy that played really well in March, had a couple of blow up games, specifically in the Horizon League Championship game for Oakland. Averaged 17 and 8, 3 assists. But he's kind of like an undersized 4. He's what, like 6'7". He's
If that,
old. He's a veteran.
I'm
He
not
knows
sure
how to
he's even
play.
6'7", but yeah.
But now you're asking him to go into the Big 12, which is the toughest and most physical league in college basketball, and be something of like the front court offensive hub. And I'm very, I don't want nervous is the wrong way to phrase it, but I think that his adjustment to that level is going to be critical to what Arizona is this season.
Well, you're not asking him to average 17 or 18 this year, Rob. You're
Mhm.
asking him to average, honestly, 12. Because you're hoping Bradley and KJ Lewis make that jump, and the strength of your team is in that perimeter. Now, again, like we said, we don't know, but Caleb Love's going to average 18 again. We know that. Maybe more, but at least 18 a game for Caleb Love, right? Bradley and KJ Lewis, you would think between the two of them, they got to average about 20 between the two. I think Trey Townsend's a guy who averages, 10, 12, maybe 14 if he really, really does well this season. But he brings experience. Again, when you bring in some of these new guys to a group that again already has 4 guys back, 4 of your top 8 basically are back. You're bringing in a veteran who's played a ton of games at the mid-major level. You're not expecting him to be the guy, but you're expecting him to do a little bit of everything, almost be a connector at that 4 spot, right? He can pass it. He can score some inside and out. And he's old. He's played a ton of games. I mean, listen, this is his COVID year. This COVID year took advantage of it and is going to be a guy that just a good piece, I think, for Arizona. And on his best day, Rob, maybe he can go for 20.
Yeah, we'll see. I think the biggest advantage is that he has the ability to do this, but it's going to be a very different kind of a 4-man than we saw last year with Kashad Johnson. And my whole thing was like adding Kashad Johnson is what took Arizona from being a questionable defensive roster into a really, really good defensive team. And I do think that Carter Bryant, the minutes that he will play off the bench, will probably help that as well. I'm a big fan of the freshman. All right, let's get to the big guys. Matias Krivas, Toby Awaka, both of them, if you took their numbers out like a per 30-minute basis,
Good.
the production is not all that different than what Arizona got from Umar Ballo this past season. I've heard really good things about Krivas. I've seen him on a couple of breakout player lists already. I think Toby Awaka is probably going to be the guy coming off the bench, but again, a really good kind of secondary big man. You know, if you get 25 minutes a game out of Krivas and 15 minutes a game out of Awaka, and both of them are putting up, you know, you get combined, what, like 18 points and 13 rebounds out of them. I think that you are ecstatic with that. I really like the 5 spot that Arizona has here, that rotation. If you haven't heard by now, we have partnered with BetMGM Sportsbook. We're going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers of the Field of 68 throughout the year. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, you can use bonus code FIELD, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. The best part, all you need to do is deposit and bet $10 of your own hard-earned money to be eligible. Here's how you make it work. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using that bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure that you use that bonus code FIELD when you sign up. BetMGM is going to have some fun offers available throughout the NBA playoffs. Bet insurance tokens, odds boost, and what I love, a nice parlay booster too from time to time, as well as a ridiculous array of player prop bets for any sport that you could possibly imagine betting on. BetMGM is and always will be the king of the prop bet. So go download the BetMGM app, use the bonus code FIELD, and sign up today. And while I've got you, a quick request. The best way to support the Field of 68 content that you get for free is to engage with us. Rate and review the podcast. Like and share the YouTube videos. Tell your friends about us. It all helps in a world where the algorithm is king. And now, back to the show.
Well, I think Awaka can play some 4 too. You know, so I think you're going to get 20 minutes, 25 minutes out of Awaka. You know, he's 6'8", 250. Didn't play a ton of Tennessee the last couple of years, but they love his ability to honestly be a versatile big. So maybe he can play with Krivas a little bit if he can step out, good passer. Again, you get a different type of look than you get with Umar Barlow in there. Barlow, remember, couldn't really step out and couldn't make free throws. So that hurt him down the stretch as well. He obviously gave him huge production, Barlow did last season. But, you know, now you've got a little more skill up front, and I think that's going to help. But, you know, Krivas, 7'2". Again, you talked about it earlier defensively, like, okay, what are they going to look like? Well, you know Bradley and Lewis can guard. You know they can guard on the perimeter, so that takes a little pressure. Like Caleb Love, just be average. Just give the effort you gave last year. Yeah. Right? Give the consistent defensive effort that you.
Well, he's going to have to guard the third best perimeter piece. So as long as he's out there like working hard and cares about defense, like it's not, you know, he's not going to be guarding the AJ Storr at Kansas. He's not going to be guarding VJ Edgecombe at Baylor, right? He's going to be guarding like the third option offensively on the perimeter. And he should be able to do that. He's 23 years old. He's been in college for 38 years. Like you should be able to put in the effort.
Because he can do it. We know he can do it if he wants to do it. And then you got Krivas as a rim protector. I mean, they do 7'2". He plays hard. Like you said, he had his moments last year right out of the gates against Duke. What did he do? He battled. He fought. He battled. You know, again, his minutes weren't consistent last year. But, you know, I think between he and Awaka, you know, the pair will give you, you know, a lot of good minutes at the 5, and then you can see Awaka getting, you know, 10 minutes at the 4. Townsend getting minutes at the 4. You could go small as well. You know, Kid Delorso, I've been told just expect spot minutes from him. I know he put up big numbers at Campbell, but I think he's going to be one of those guys that, you know, it's an adjustment, and they're not expecting him to put up, you know, like Trey Townsend. You know, they're not the same. Delorso is going to be a real piece who I think gives you, you know, maybe 10 minutes a game.
Yeah, he's going to be the floor spacer. He's going to be a guy that you bring in to kind of play that role for 12 to 15 minutes a game would be my guess. Manuel Steven and Henry Visar, a couple other 7-footers. I just wanted to make sure that we mentioned them and got them in there. All right, the X factor for this group. I think that it's obvious, Jeff. Is there a point guard on this roster? Like because you can't. I don't think you can make a deep run unless you have a pure point guard. Well, I don't want to say pure point guard, but a guy that can kind of be the head of the snake offensively, set people up, get you in your offense, make other people better. And I don't know if they have it. I think Jaden Bradley proving that he is will be what takes this team from being like, yeah, they're pretty good to like, okay, we can talk about them in the mix with Houston and Baylor and Iowa State and Kansas at the very top of the Big 12.
Yeah, I mean that. Listen, you know how I feel about point guard play, right? Like you're capped. If you don't have one, you're
Mm-hmm.
capped at how far you can go in the NCAA tournament. I'll add, like, it's still Caleb Love to me. It's still whether he takes another step. Can he take one more step? If he can, wow! Like, again, he got a lot better in some of the things he did last year. Um, I think if he could take one more step, man, think of how good they could be defensively. Think of how good that perimeter would be if Caleb Love just decided, like, I'm going to be an MFer on that end of the court. Or how good he'd be if he just decided this year, okay, you know what? I'm not going to be a chucker. I got enough options around me. I'm going to be a little bit more of a point guard. And then at the end of the game, they're going to have to guard me one-on-one. They're going to have to
Mm-hmm.
guard me one-on-one. I get by whoever I want. And I'm not going to take some of those step back crazy shots that, yeah, I hit one of them. I hit one of them and it looks good. And then I miss the next three and I shoot us out of the game. He's got to get away from that. And if he can get away from that, listen, that is the difference. Realistically, think about it. That's the difference in them going to Sweet 16 or making a Final Four. Point guard's great, but ultimately it's gonna fall on Caleb Love and how he performs in those specific games.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said. I wouldn't call that the X factor. I would call that the factor. Like that,
It is.
that's what it's got to be, right? Your expectations for them. Look, they're going to the Big 12. Houston going into the Big 12 and winning the Big 12 is a rarity and is not something that I expect Arizona to do. I honestly think that they can be a top 10 team in America and finish in fifth place and be clearly the fifth best team in the Big 12 and still be a top 10 team in America, just on how good that conference is at the top.
Brutal at the top. Absolutely brutal. I'm with you. I think they're probably see, again, I just worry about the consistency of their backcourt. I just think you have a lot of questions there right now, really specifically with Bradley and Lewis. Even up front, you got some questions. So I would say, yeah, I'd probably put them more of like, fifth or sixth in the league and top 15, 20 overall in the country. And again, I have no idea how far they go in the NCAA tournament. I would say another Sweet 16 is probably the most realistic option here.
All right, grade their offseason.
I mean, again, retention was good. They had to bring back Caleb Love. I don't think they had a choice there. Had enough money, got some dudes out of the portal. I give it a B plus.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with it too. You lost a couple guys, a couple starters that I don't think they were necessarily that displeased about losing. I think is probably the way to kind of phrase it. Like you lose Ballo and Boswell,
They
you
weren't
got to
paying for
replace them.
Ballo. They weren't
Yeah,
paying that type of money for Umar Ballo to stay. And
yeah, that's what I'm.
Boswell, it had, I don't want to say run its course, but like he needed a fresh start. He
Yep.
needed it. They needed it. Listen, they tried to get Nemhard a year ago to be their starting point guard, and were kind of thrust into having Boswell be the guy last year, and he just couldn't handle it.
Yeah, so I don't think that they're necessarily that upset about the losses. I think that they did a good job plugging gaps um, on with the transfer portal stuff. They got a couple good freshmen, but they are kind of making a couple bets that I don't think are going to necessarily be home runs. Um, I think it's a little bit of a risk bringing in Trey Townsend. I think he'll be fine. I think that there's a downside there. I think that betting on three guys, three sophomore or three underclassmen to all make a leap in Jaden Bradley, KJ Lewis, and Krivas is a little bit of a risk. I expect all of them to, I think it's more likely than not that all three make some kind of a jump. But again, you're betting on your player development. So I give it a solid B plus. I don't think that they're going to end up being a preseason top 15 team, and I don't think that you can complain about that when you lose the 4 guys that they lost in the offseason. So Tommy, good job. Guys, keep it tuned here. Field of 68 YouTube channel will be rolling out about 45 of these offseason grades throughout August and September.